Welcome to my channel GIC. Subscribe for daily IELTS Listening Test.
Hi, Sally. I'm so glad you've been able to cover for our normal babysitter at such short notice. You're much younger than I imagined, but you come highly recommended by the agency.
Don't worry, Mrs. Johnson. I've been doing this for a while now. You can rest assured everything will be fine. Now, you have 2 children, isn't that right? Tom, who is 3, and 15-month-old Rose.
Exactly. Rose is having a nap right now, and here comes Tom with my husband. He's just collected him from the local creche. Hi, darling. Now, Rose has had dinner about 5. I've left some jars of baby food in the fridge, but they'll need to be warmed up. While Rose is eating, give Tom a snack. Something like a banana or slices of apple would be fine.
I see.
At about 5:30, I like to give Rose a bath. You're all right giving the baby a bath?
That's no problem.
Great. I've left all you need in the bathroom. Now, normally, my husband will take Tom out for a walk when Rose is having her bath, but let him just do some indoor activities, like playing with some of his toys or looking at his books. Tom has his dinner about 6. I've left it in the fridge, and you can give Rose a bottle if she wants it. But I do want her to be asleep by 6:30. Tom can play with his toys while you're putting her to bed.
That's fine, I understand.
Tom can play until about 7, though he needs a bath around 1:15 and then change into his pyjamas. There's always a bit of drama around bedtime, but I like him to be tucked up by 8.
I understand. Some children need to be calmed down before they can go to sleep.
I do agree. I keep a nightlight on as it reassures him, though my husband thinks that and feels that Tom should sleep in the dark, as he thinks it's more natural.
I see.
Oh, about Rose's dinner. You probably disagree, but I find these prepared jars of food just so much more convenient, especially when I don't have much time.
I know what you mean, but they do contain a lot of sugar, so I think it's best to stick to whole foods.
Well, if you think you have the time, do what you think is best. But if you spend all the time on food prep, you definitely won't have time to take Tom for a walk and give Rose a bath. My husband thinks it's important that the children aren't cooped up indoors all day, but I'm not so keen when the evenings start to draw in the winter.
That's fine.
Well, that's about it. You'll find lots of toys and books for both the children. I'm particularly keen that the children have a lot of books around them, rather than depending on screens for their entertainment.
I agree. Plus, they'll become a familiar part of life for when the children go to school and go on to university if that's what they want.
Quite well. I think that's everything. So, if you don't have any questions, we'll be off. We'll be back around midnight. See you.
Bye. Have a good time.
You will hear the curator of the Morrow Museum talking about the museum's attractions.
Hello, and welcome to the Morrow Museum. As you can see, this is our reception, and there's also a small shop where you can buy some books on the artist and his times, as well as postcards and other reproductions of some of his best-known paintings. To your right is a study room for scholars to examine the many diaries, letters, and other documents relevant to the artist's life. While to the left, is a small theatre in which you can view a short TV documentary that was made a few years ago. Behind me is the main gallery, which not only contains some of Morrow's better-known oil paintings, but also some artifacts from his life, including his writing desk, with photos of his much-loved wife and family. Go through to the left, and there's a small exhibition of Morrow's drawings, and beyond that is a small cafe with a small garden terrace and some toilets. Going back to the main gallery and continuing to the right, you'll find a reproduction of Morrow's studio and what it may have looked like in the 1870s, at the time he was painting his famous The Stages of Life panorama. If you go through this, you come to the museum's star attraction, the panorama, The Stages of Life. Before you go into the museum, perhaps it's worth giving you a little information on the artist. Anthony Morrow, that's M-O-R-R-O-W, is often confused with his French contemporary, Gustave Moreau, M-O-R-E-A-U. And though he worked for many years in France and was well known to his French contemporaries, he was actually born here in England to an English father and Italian mother. His life was full of joy and tragedy. He had a loving wife who he adored and 5 children, leading a happy married life. However, the death of his eldest child, a girl, came as a great blow to him, and this was followed the next year by the passing of his beloved mother. However, it was the death of his wife, while giving birth to their youngest child, that had the most profound effect on Morrow, and was the ultimate inspiration for his Stages of Life panorama. Following his wife's passing, Morrow found he was no longer able to work in the family home, which contained so many memories. So he left his children in the care of his loving sister and travelled throughout Europe. He first went to Italy and stayed for a while with his mother's family in Naples. It was in Italy that he first had the idea for the panorama and made some preliminary drawings, which can be seen in our drawing gallery. However, still plagued by grief, he then moved on to France and, as a result of a bout of illness, went on to Switzerland to recuperate. He then returned to France, and it was in Marseille, where he lived for many years before, that he painted his panorama. Though the painting has some affinity with the Impressionists in the handling of paint and the range of colours, his work is generally accepted as an example of symbolism, though some have likened it to the post-Impressionist works of Cézanne and others, while some historians have seen elements of Cubism, though this is not a view held by many. However, when it was exhibited in 1876, it was not received well by the critics. However, it was bought by a wealthy Parisian industrialist and placed in his private chapel. The panorama charts life from birth to death. The artist produced it as a semicircular panorama. As he said, life surrounds us and consumes us all. When you look at the painting, you may recognize some of Morrow's family members from the photos in the main gallery. His youngest daughter, Charlotte, can be seen in the early stages of life's saga in somewhat nostalgic, melancholic scenes. His sister also appears in the middle section, in perhaps the least mournful passage of the painting, while his wife, perhaps not surprisingly, takes centre stage at the end. You may wonder how the painting ended up here, in a small English seaside town. The building, which now houses the museum, was once Morrow's childhood home and was bought by the local council when it was threatened with demolition in the 1970s. The panorama had been in the country since the end of the Second World War, when it was given to the nation by the French government as a token of appreciation for our hosting the Free French Forces. However, it was the intervention of Clementine Churchill, Winston Churchill's widow, that saw it being permanently housed here. It is a sad yet at the time an uplifting painting, from one of our least known, but perhaps most romantic painters. I hope you enjoy your visit.
You will hear a lecturer talking to 3 students about their options for a study year abroad.
Well, hello everybody. As you know, I've been arranging short, small group tutorials for everyone studying French who's due to go on their study year abroad. I want to outline the options available and get some idea of what your preferences may be. As usual, we have lots of opportunities in France, mainly in education, including our usual link-up with Paris University, which a lot of students have enjoyed over the years. But we also have placements in non-European locations.
That sounds interesting. Where are these places?
Well, we have some opportunities in Canada. Quebec is very interested in promoting the use of French in the country, and there are a number of opportunities as assistants in primary schools, as well as the chance of working for the local newspaper in Bas-Saint-Laurent, one of the strongest francophone areas of the country.
That's interesting. I never thought of Canada for our study year.
Me neither.
Well, there are also some opportunities in the developing world, in Haiti, for example.
That's in the Caribbean, isn't it?
That's right. It's still suffering the effects of the 2010 earthquake. There's been a lot of disruption to everyday life ever since. There are a lot of voluntary organizations and NGOs working there, and they are always looking for volunteers. There's no pay, but you would get a small stipend to help with living expenses. Then there's work helping monitor elephant populations in Senegal, in the Nyokolo-Kobo National Park. Again, it won't make you rich, but it's very worthy work.
That sounds great. I've been to France lots of time, so the chance to go to different places like Haiti and Senegal is really exciting.
So, what I would like from you are your 3 choices, first, second and third, and hopefully we can get you to a place you like. Let's start with you, Shireen.
I like the idea of visiting Canada. So my first choice would be the newspaper you mentioned, as I am interested in journalism.
And your second and third choices?
Well, if there are any more journalism opportunities, either in France or elsewhere, that would be good. So my second choice would be working for a newspaper in France or Switzerland for a third choice.
Thanks, Shireen. What about you, Ben?
Well, I do want to work for a charity, so that job in Haiti working for a charity would be my first choice. After that, I like the idea of Senegal, and if that's not possible, a place in France would be fine.
We'll see what we can do. And lastly, Rena. What would you like to do in your year?
I really like working in nature, so the idea of doing the elephant survey in Senegal really appeals to me. If not, Haiti would be my second choice and France would be my third.
Well, thanks everybody. I'll see what I can do so everybody gets their first choice. But it all depends on the number of places available. Once I've spoken to everyone in the year group, and when everything has been finally settled, I'll send a list of options out and you can choose the one you'd like. Hopefully, you'll get your first choice.
Thanks.
You will hear a university lecturer talking about animals who have travelled into space.
The space race is beginning to speed up once more as India and China join the USA, Europe, and Russia in sending craft beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Within the next decade or two, we may see humanity's first mission to Mars. Today, I first want to look at those unsung heroes of space exploration, animals, before looking at how the rigors of spaceflight may impact on the human body. The dog Laika is well known for taking the first Earth orbit on the 3rd of November, 1957, almost 2.5 years before the first man with Yuri Gagarin's first orbit on the 12th of April, 1961. What is not well known is that the first animal, or should I say animals, that went into space was not a dog, but fruit flies. They were transported on a rocket launched from New Mexico in the USA on the 20th of February 1947 and travelled just above the 100-kilometre point where space officially begins, and then were safely parachuted to Earth. Because fruit flies have a similar genetic makeup to humans, scientists wanted to see if solar radiation had any effect on them. The fact that they were fine paved the way for future human spaceflight. Laika was one of a number of stray dogs found on the streets of Moscow. It was believed by surviving the hardships and cold of winters on the city's streets, such animals would be better suited to the rigors of spaceflight. They went through a series of demanding endurance trials and medical examinations, leaving 3 medically fit candidates. One of the final tests was for the dogs to be placed in increasingly smaller cages over several weeks. 2 other dogs, Albina and Mushka, didn't show Laika's calm temperament, so Laika was chosen. It was never intended that Laika should return to the Earth alive. Oleg Gazenko, one of the scientists on Laika's Sputnik 2 mission, has been quoted as saying, "We did not learn enough from this mission to justify the death of a dog." At the time, the National Canine Defence League in the UK called on all dog owners to observe a minute's silence for each day Laika was in space. The dog was later commemorated with a statue at the Cosmodrome where she was trained, and NASA named an area of the surface of Mars after her. The first dogs to be successfully returned to Earth following their flight in space were Strelka and Belka, meaning little arrow and squirrel. They made their trip from the Soviet Union in August 1960. Strelka later had a litter of puppies, one of which was given to US President John F. Kennedy by the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. A cat has also made the journey into space. In October 1963, one of a number of stray cats from Paris was blasted upwards on a French rocket. The French scientists didn't name cats, as there was a fear that the mission staff would become too fond of them, so the cat was simply named C341. When the cat returned to Earth, the press demanded the cat was given a name. Felix, after the cartoon cat, was first chosen, but was renamed Felicette after it was discovered she was female. Over time, a whole menagerie of animals has been blasted spaceward, including large numbers of mice, over 30 monkeys, a pair of tortoises who orbited the moon, and 2 spiders called Anita and Arabella. But perhaps the most curious creature sent into the cosmos is a microscopic invertebrate known as a water bear. As it can survive extremes of temperature on Earth and is capable of living for decades without water, it was seen if they could survive 12 days outside a spacecraft in the freezing, irradiated vacuum of space. They could. From 1998, the International Space Station has hosted many animal visitors, helping to investigate the effects of long-term living under reduced gravity, known as microgravity. Some have produced surprising results. For example, spiders found it difficult to spin webs, and moths hatched on Earth were unable to control their flights and clung to surfaces. Those born in space did just fine. The effects of long periods in space on sleep patterns were studied using mice. While both mice and fish were part of a research program on bone demineralization, a major problem for astronauts during long periods away from Earth. Space science has moved along a lot since those first fruit flies were launched into space, and it's possible that we may see the first interplanetary travel in our lifetime, with the first manned mission to Mars. Attitudes to animal testing have also changed and are guided by two principles. First, that of need. Can the use of animals be justified? The second is of morality, to keep suffering to a minimum and avoid fatalities. Nevertheless, animal studies have told us a lot about how space travel, especially prolonged space travel, may affect the human body. And that is what I'd like to consider now.